Before we begin this powerful story of a police officer and former President Trump that will touch your heart, make sure to subscribe so you never miss stories that truly matter. Asterisk. The sun cast a gentle glow over the National Peace Officers Memorial as crowds gathered, waving flags and banners in honor of fallen heroes. It was a somber occasion, one meant to pay tribute to the brave who had given their lives in service. At the center stage stood President Donald Trump, ready to deliver a speech and personally recognize distinguished officers from across the nation. Among them was Officer Evelyn Moore, 28, from a small town in New Hampshire. She wore a perfectly pressed navy blue uniform. Her gaze scanned the large crowd. While she appeared calm, her fingers nervously tugged at the edge of her sleeve. Evelyn had received the honor after rescuing a young boy from a house engulfed in flames during a gang-related incident. The heroic act had drawn national praise and earned her the spotlight. But today, as cheers echoed at the president's arrival, Evelyn didn't feel proud. She felt burdened. As the president walked to the podium, media cameras zoomed in. People expected her to be thrilled to meet him, but Evelyn had already made her decision, one that felt heavier than her badge. Not even her fellow officers or family members knew. This wasn't political, nor was it a protest. It was deeply personal. It began 5 years earlier in a dimly lit hospital room where a life ended. A promise was made, and a young officer vowed to never forget. Today wasn't about causing a scene. It was about honoring the truth, one that would soon bring both the president and the audience to complete stillness. 5 years ago, Evelyn sat next to her brother Daniel's hospital bed, gripping his frail hand. He'd been shot during a routine traffic stop that turned tragic. A bullet had torn into his chest and struck an artery. There wasn't enough time for the paramedics to save him. Daniel wasn't just her brother, he was her best friend, her inspiration to join the force. Growing up, they'd played games as cops, vowing to protect others when they grew up. That dream had brought them both to wear the badge. Now Daniel was motionless, his breathing shallow. Evelyn felt completely helpless. "I'm scared," he whispered. "I'm here," she replied, holding back tears. "You're going to pull through." But he didn't. Before passing, Daniel spoke his final wish. "Promise me, if anything ever happens, don't let people forget what we really are. Not just the badge, the heart behind it." That night, Evelyn made that vow. She would serve not for recognition, but with purpose and compassion. But over time, she saw that mission begin to fade. Officers were celebrated for aggression. The media twisted stories. Real heroes were forgotten in favor of political headlines. When the invitation came to meet President Trump and receive national recognition, Evelyn hesitated. She didn't want to smile for cameras. She wanted to speak for Daniel and for all the quiet sacrifices that go unnoticed. She finally told her captain, "I'll go, but I'm not there for handshakes." "What will you do? Tell the truth." As the motorcade arrived, Secret Service secured the stage, and silence settled over the crowd. President Trump stepped out, waving as his iconic red tie flapped in the wind. The names of fallen officers echoed from the speakers. Evelyn stood, second in a row of 9 honorees. Cameras captured everything. The live broadcast had begun. Trump began his speech. "These officers represent courage, sacrifice, and what keeps America safe." Applause followed. "I'd like to thank them personally," he said. He walked down the line. First Officer Marcus Lewis, then Sergeant Angela Vasquezich, receiving smiles and handshakes. Then he stopped in front of Evelyn. He extended his hand. For a moment, time froze. Millions watched as Evelyn stood tall, took a breath, and said, "Mr. President, I can't shake your hand." The crowd gasped. Even Trump looked surprised. But Evelyn wasn't done. "I mean no disrespect. I'm here to honor a promise to my brother, and to every officer who serves with heart, not just for the title." Trump's hand lowered slowly. "Go on," he said. In front of a silent nation, Evelyn began telling a story no one expected. Even the wind stilled. "My brother, Daniel Moore, was an officer. He died saving someone's life. But his story never made the news. No medal, no ceremony, just a folded flag. I'm not here to make a statement," she continued. "I'm heartbroken. We've forgotten the heart behind the badge. We celebrate big stories and viral clips. But the quiet sacrifices, the whispered promises in hospital rooms, those get lost." The president stood quietly, listening. Cameras zoomed in, but they didn't capture rebellion, only pain, love, and sincerity. "I accepted this invitation," Evelyn added, "not to be signed but to remind this country what we risk losing, our humanity." Daniel didn't want praise. He just didn't want to be forgotten. Her voice trembled. "So I couldn't shake your hand, sir, because this moment needed more than a photo, it needed the truth." Silence reigned. Then, slowly, applause began. Soft at first, then swelling. Trump nodded, then, unexpectedly, asked for the microphone. "Officer Moore," he said, "thank you." His voice was humble, almost quiet. "I didn't know your brother's story. I didn't know what today would bring. But I'm glad I was here for it. This isn't about cameras or politics, he continued. You didn't shake my hand, but you moved my heart. He paused. I want to honor your brother, not just with medals, but with a legacy. We'll name a new training initiative, after Daniel Moore, one that teaches not just tactics, but the heart behind the uniform. Cheers erupted. Evelyn trembled. She hadn't asked for this, but her brother's name was finally being spoken aloud by a president. Sometimes, not shaking a hand can reach more hearts than applause ever could. Later backstage, an aide knocked on her door. The president would like to speak privately. Evelyn entered a small room. Trump was seated alone, no cameras, no press. I meant what I said, he told her. But I want to know more about Daniel. She shared everything. His kindness, how he mentored kids, bought meals for strangers, how he lived and served with humility. No spotlight, just service. Trump listened in silence. He used to say, she whispered, you don't need a cape to save the world. Trump leaned back. That's the motto. That's what we'll use for the initiative. Evelyn nodded tearfully. He would have liked that. Trump extended his hand again. This time, Evelyn shook it, not for politics, but for Daniel. Outside, a teenage boy approached her. Officer Moore, he said nervously, I saw what you did. What's your name? She asked. Jordan. My dad was a cop. He died last year. No one ever talks about him, but what you said reminded me why he mattered. She knelt. Tell me something about him. He used to sneak candy into my lunch. He called it secret fuel for good kids. She smiled. Sounds like a hero to me. Jordan grinned. When I grow up, I want to be like him. And like you. That one moment was enough for Evelyn to know she'd done the right thing. By nightfall, headlines filled the internet. Officer refuses Trump handshake, then moves him to tears. Evelyn Moore's powerful message of compassion over politics. Cable shows debated her actions. Some called it disrespectful, others called it brave. Evelyn read the comments quietly in her hotel room. Some hurt, not because they were true, but because they questioned her heart. Then her phone rang. It was her father, gruff, retired, and quiet. Since Daniel's death, I saw what you did, he said. Evelyn braced herself. I was proud, he added. You said what I couldn't after we lost him, and you said it with grace. Tears rolled down her cheeks. Thanks, Dad. You know what Daniel would have said? You finally learned to talk without yelling. They both laughed. That moment steadied her. 2 days later, back at her New Hampshire precinct, Evelyn returned to little fanfare, but something had changed. Her desk was covered in letters from strangers, dispatchers, families, volunteers, stories, and thanks. One letter read, I wanted to end my life last week. Your story gave me a reason to stay. Thank you for seeing someone like me. Evelyn's hand trembled. This wasn't about politics. It was about being seen. She called the White House. Tell the president, she said. We need to include mental health support in the initiative. They listened. A month later, she stood at the opening of the Daniel Moore Initiative Training Center in Virginia. No cameras, no press, just families and officers. On the wall, carved in marble, you don't need a cape to save the world. Below at Daniel's name, a director approached her. Will you teach our compassion courses? She looked at the wall and nodded. Yes. 3 weeks later, Evelyn received a sealed letter handwritten by President Trump. You reminded me leadership isn't about being seen, it's about what people feel when you're gone. I want you to help lead a national campaign called Service with Heart. No cameras, just truth. Let me know. Evelyn whispered, what do you think, Daniel? In her heart, she already knew the answer. And on her first tour stop, in a small Ohio town, an elderly woman approached her with a photo. My husband died on duty in 1987. No one ever said his name. He was part-time, they said it didn't count. Evelyn held her hand. Asterisk, it counts now. She carefully took the photo, scanned it, and made a promise to the woman Ray's name would be added to the memorial wall at the initiative. 3 days later, Evelyn returned to Virginia and engraved his name herself, quietly and without any audience. She later sent the woman a photo of the finished engraving. The response came through a shaky voicemail. I waited 35 years. You brought him back to life for me. Thank you. That night, under the stars, Evelyn sat silently, emotions swirling. So many names, so many untold stories, lost in bureaucracy and time. She whispered into the night, we see you now. And, for the first time since Daniel's passing, she didn't feel like she was carrying his memory alone. She was carrying thousands. Standing in front of a fresh group of recruits, Evelyn prepared to teach. But this lesson wasn't about tactics or weapons, it was about the heart. She shared Daniel's story with the same care one would use to pass down a treasured heirloom. After class, a young recruit named Chris Torres approached her. I wasn't sure about this path, he admitted. My mom cried when I joined. She was afraid I'd die for nothing. But now, I think I understand why we wear the badge. Evelyn nodded. Tell her you met someone whose brother did die, and it meant everything. Chris hesitated. I'm scared. That's okay, she replied gently. Fear means you still care about life. Just don't let it turn into bitterness. Let it lead you to compassion. I don't want to lose this feeling, he murmured. She reached into her pocket and handed him a small patch with Daniel's quote on it. Keep this in your vest, not for others to see, just for you. Chris accepted it, tears in his eyes, and Evelyn realized something powerful. Victories didn't always come in headlines. Sometimes, they came in quiet moments of hope passed from one person to another. That night, she understood Daniel's legacy wasn't just being remembered, it was growing, spreading through those who never met him but now carried his purpose. Evelyn's days became filled with speeches, training classes, and heartfelt letters from strangers. Then, one rainy afternoon, her phone rang from an unknown number. She nearly ignored it, but curiosity got the best of her. Officer Moore, a soft male voice said. Yes, this is Matthew Carson. I was the man your brother saved. She froze. Daniel Moore. Yes, her heart skipped. I saw the speech. I saw the moment. I've carried this guilt for years. He continued. I was drunk leaving my sister's wedding. He pulled me over. I panicked. I ran. Someone nearby had a gun, and Daniel pushed me down and took the bullet. Evelyn's breath hitched. I served time for DUI and resisting. But I turned things around. I've been sober ever since. I started a rehab center. Named it after a friend who saved me, though I never knew his full name until now. Evelyn whispered, You remember him? I remember everything. Silence filled the line. Could I come see the WA? He asked. I want to thank him. Her voice cracked. He would have wanted that. After the call, Evelyn sat stunned. She had honored Daniel's sacrifice publicly, but now, it finally had a face. A life saved, now saving others. A week later, Matthew visited the Daniel Moore Initiative Center. He didn't dress up, just jeans and humility. Evelyn waited by the wall, unsure what to expect. But when they met eyes, all she saw was gratitude. He found Daniel's name and touched it gently. He was younger than me, and braver than I'll ever be. I've tried to live worthy of his gift, he said. My rehab center has helped over 200 men. We talk about second chances all the time. I had mine because of him. He handed her a keychain with a small tag. Daniel House. For those who still have time, I want you to have this, he said, so you know he's still saving lives. Evelyn broke down. Of all the tributes and ceremonies, this was the most real. A boy her brother saved had become a force for good. Before leaving, Matthew asked, Would you ever speak at Daniel House? I'd be honored, she replied. That night she wrote. In her journal, Daniel's death broke me. But today, I saw what it built. She no longer felt his absence, she felt his presence everywhere. The next month, Evelyn was invited to speak at a national law enforcement summit in Washington, D.C. She hesitated. She didn't enjoy the spotlight, but the summit's theme, restoring trust through service, pulled her in. She didn't give a rehearsed speech. She shared her truth, Daniel's story, Matthew's, and the idea that change begins not with laws, but with presence and empathy. We don't wear badges to appear strong, she said. We wear them to be strong. For those who can't, she ended with Daniel's words. You don't need a cape to save the world. The room stood not just to honor her, but because her message resonated deeply. A young officer named Priya from Chicago approached her. I was close to quitting, she admitted. But your words, they reminded me why I started. She showed Evelyn her phone screen. It displayed Daniel's quote. You saved me from giving up, she said. That night, Evelyn remembered Matthew had once said the same. Soon, Evelyn was receiving letters again. Departments were adopting service with heart trainings. Schools invited her to speak. Families submitted names for the memorial. And Evelyn knew it was never about her. Daniel had lit this fire. She was just keeping it alive. She finally visited Daniel House in Michigan. A quiet neighborhood. No flash, just a plaque by the door. Inside, it smelled of coffee and hope. Matthew welcomed her. These are the lives your brother still touches, he said. They sat in a circle for a recovery meeting. Stories poured out: relapse, redemption, healing. A young man named Trevor spoke. I never met Daniel, but if he hadn't saved Matt, I wouldn't be clean today. So, I owe him everything. He passed Evelyn a small wooden coin. One side read hope, the other, Daniel. It's tradition, Trevor said. You pass it on when you meet someone who needs it more. Evelyn added it to her brother's old box of keepsakes. It was the most valuable item in it. 2 months later, she was summoned back to Washington. No clear reason, just a note. She was led into a room filled with officers and leaders. President Trump entered holding a folder. He smiled at her. Officer Evelyn Moore, he began. You once refused my handshake. And it made me reflect more deeply than most speeches. Eva could, the room chuckled. You reminded me that true acknowledgement isn't in ceremony, but in sincerity. He pulled out a plaque. On behalf of a grateful nation, and in honor of your brother's legacy, I present you with the Presidential Medal of Public Service. Gasps, applause. Evelyn stepped forward, not for herself, but for every unthanked protector. She accepted the handshake not for politics, but for healing. As she turned to the crowd, she said, This isn't just mine. It belongs to every family who wondered if their loss mattered, and Daniel's name, once forgotten, had touched a nation's heart.